Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Scenic View podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Owens, the Communications Director here at SEANC, alongside Executive Director Artis Watkins, Government Relations Director Suzanne Beasley, and podcast producer Sam Klein. How is everyone doing today?
Good.
We're good.
Let's have a great show. All right. If you're listening to this, this means you may be on vacation, actually. You may be on your beach week for the 4th of July.
Don't forget the sunscreen.
Or you're bored.
Or you're bored. Or you're driving to your destination.
Yeah. Or you just want to know a lot about state employment.
That's right. And that's why we're here. Today is Wednesday, July 2nd. And it is still hot outside. Today would be my grandpa's birthday. He'd be like 126.
Wow.
My goodness. Okay.
No, maybe,
Shout out to John's grandpa.
but yeah, I just thought of that because he's July 2nd. So July 4th is coming up. Y'all have any plans? It's on a Friday this year. I think that works out well.
Yeah,
So
just to stay cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
you don't have to take an extra day off because it's on a Friday, right?
So you
you
get a long
3-day
weekend.
It's a long weekend.
Yeah.
This week, we're joined by another big-time guest and Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey, who's dropping by a little later in the show to talk about some things going on at his office. But for now, we'll just jump right in with our usual budget talk. Nothing's happening.
Yeah. The legislature is, I told you guys last week that they're going to recess and take a break. Chatter is coming back in October, maybe for a budget. They have to come back periodically while they're still technically in session because they have to meet every so often. But those, so far they're skeletal sessions. Anything can change. There's a lot going on right now.
Yes. With that in mind, I did hear today the Tim Boylan podcast he had Colin Campbell and Lucille from Axios. And they were talking about the big, beautiful bill working through Congress right now and how that's probably going to prompt the state government to kind of force them to come to deal with this, right? Because they're going to have to work on the Medicaid part especially.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many aspects of it that affect the government. And that's why we've been saying on this podcast, and we've said to legislative leadership, we didn't see how they were going to get a budget done until they really knew what was going to come down from Washington. So now we have a better picture.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean less revenue for all of the states. There's no way around that. And states have to figure out how to prioritize what's left and what they can cut.
So it seems like, to me, I haven't really studied the BBB, Big Beautiful Bill, but it seems like a lot of the cuts are pushed out beyond 2026 midterms, though. So maybe they wouldn't deal with them this year, but it's a 2-year budget, so I guess they'd have to at least have an idea of what they're going to cut.
I think they definitely have to, because I don't think they're going to abandon the idea to continue cutting the personal income tax rate. And so if you're not, and you're bringing in less, you've got to go ahead and start slamming the brakes. So I don't know, I don't know what they're going to do. And I wouldn't want to have to deal with this, to be clear. For budget writers, it's a huge job. It's a very tough job, and you do have to pick winners and losers.
Yeah.
And so it is incumbent upon us and upon our members to call and make the case for why the public services they provide, or provided if they're retired, need to be there for the public, and how it's benefiting not just the citizens themselves, but even the businesses you want to continue to attract to keep your economic growth chugging along despite some pretty draconian stuff.
It really seems like their job has gotten a whole lot harder this week.
It did.
Than it was, yeah.
But Senator Berger publicly came out, said it's a great bill, and Speaker Hall has been very supportive of President Trump and his efforts. So I feel like they're okay with the concept, but I don't know how they're going to deal with.
Surely they must have
this lack of
something
money
that they're already thinking about, though, because,
They must, yeah.
The BBB, it's not new. They knew this was coming, so surely they've got something already in mind, maybe some framework laid out for what their budget's going to look like. But yeah.
I did see a lot of comments on the Facebook video that was Suzanne speaking that had a lot of people who were very upset that they're leaving without a budget. And they're like, you get to go on vacation while we still have nothing. We don't know what's happening.
People do get mad at that. And as lobbyists, though, we would rather them take the time and get it right than rush it through.
Yeah.
So really, I don't think they were just trying to go take a vacation by any means. I think they're all still plugging away.
Yeah, it's just.
But yeah, you're right. That's the way the public looks at it. So,
and in all honesty, without actually saying it out loud, they may have just been waiting to see what happens with this bill too, right?
I feel sure.
I mean, I would think they have. How do you put together a budget with this coming down the pipe?
Yeah.
So as always, stay tuned on the budget. So you got to visit the governor's mansion yesterday, Artis.
Yes.
It was for the signing of Senate Bill 124, which is a bill concerned with hiring and modernization of the state human resources department, right?
Right. So Stacey Meyer, the director of the Office of State Human Resources, and her team had pushed through legislation this year, and it was very well received, I think unanimously on the Senate side, at least. I don't know about the House side. That would, when we say modernize it, it shortens the time it's going to take to hire a state employee. We've talked about that a few times on this podcast. It was like 6 months.
Yeah, 182 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
From somebody putting an application in and us telling them whether they got the job. Nobody's going to be waiting around for that. This would address that. It would relax degree requirements on state jobs where it's appropriate. I mean, if somebody's going to be a medical doctor, they still have to be an MD. But where it's appropriate, it's relaxing some degree requirements, doing anything they can to try to address the vacancy rate, but to make state government run more efficiently from an HR perspective. They did a tremendous amount of work around this, and I know Suzanne and her team supported them in that effort, so we were invited to the mansion for the signing. We were very appreciative to be included. Our president, Kirk Montgomery, was able to attend with us. That was an honor to be involved in that.
Yeah, and it looked like it was a bipartisan effort.
It was.
It was. It's a good bill. Stacey Meyer's staff is awesome. I have thoroughly enjoyed working with Wesley Davis. He's a huge help.
He's a future star.
Yes, he is. So, yeah, they're good people over there.
All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap up our witty banter on the week and get to our interview with Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey. Hope you enjoy. Our guest this week is the Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey. Welcome to the podcast studio.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Mike is a two-time IMPAC endorsed candidate, right?
Correct.
Oh, they love Commissioner Causey at IMPAC.
He's a frequent guest at our convention. I've seen him there several times, and so we're happy to have him here.
And you do right by your state employees, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, because they're providing the services.
Yeah, so I guess we can kind of start there. Budget-wise, I know the proposals have had cuts for every agency. I think about 20%, and they're kind of leaving it up to the agencies, is what we understand, to decide where you're going to make those cuts to meet that budget. And there obviously are some position cuts in there. How are you looking at this in your agency?
Well, one of the things that I've tried my best to get the legislators to understand is that we're different than other state agencies in that the Department of Insurance is a totally self-funded agency.
Right.
We totally get all of our funds either from, it's called an insurance regulatory fund. When you pay your insurance premiums, every dollar you pay, there's a state premium tax of 2.5% that comes to the state. We get that, process that, and the legislature decades ago passed legislation to fund the Department of Insurance to make it a self-funded agency by letting us keep a small percentage of that state premium tax. And we also were getting about $12 million in federal funding. We don't know where that's going to go, but that's what we had been. And so when the budget proposal came out from the Senate this year, I was totally shocked because it was going to decimate a program that we have called the Seniors Health Insurance Information Program, or SHIP.
Very important.
Which had been around since 1986. Commissioner Jim Long had started that. We were one of the first states in the country to implement the SHIP program. And since 1986, that program's helped over 3 million people in North Carolina. And it's not all seniors, but it's primarily seniors and anybody that's on Medicare, which includes about 268,000 disabled folks that are dependent on Medicare. And those, we call them counselors, and they're certified. They have to go through substantial training. We have 26 people in the SHIP area. Melinda Munden is the division head there. There was 11 of those positions that we fund at the state level, and the others are federally funded. Well, earlier this year, we heard proposals from the federal government that they were going to stop their funding of the SHIP program. So I wrote letters to Congress to say, we need to take another look. You don't need to cut the funding for a program like this because we helped so many. Just last year, we helped over 70,000 people that really needed help with Medicare or insurance issues.
It is so complicated now. I don't care what your age is, but for seniors, it can be a difficult thing.
Well, you see the ads, it's called Medicare Advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's over 163 different Medicare Advantage plans, and nobody, even if you're an insurance expert, you couldn't review that number of plans.
Yeah, I know there's even some confusion with Humana from the state health plan and Humana, who also offers other Medicare Advantage plans.
And then the prescription drug plans, 16 different choices there, and over 45 companies that write Medicare supplement policies. Mm-hmm. So it's easy to see where people can get confused. And the SHIP program, we have volunteers. We have over 800 volunteers spread out across 100 counties. And these folks in all of our senior centers, we have certified SHIP counselors. Some are working for the counties or the cities, but they all are under the umbrella of our program.
Oh, wow.
And it's been working very, very well. And I was so shocked to see when that Senate budget came out, they wanted to eliminate all the state-funded positions.
Yeah.
And they wanted us to cut. They had the positions identified, 19 total positions. And I'm going back to say, wait a minute, we don't need positions cut. We need positions added because we don't have enough folks now. And the House did not have those same cuts to the SHIP program, thank goodness. But the point I was trying to get across, and I don't know if I've done any real good of getting that point across, it doesn't matter how many positions the legislature cuts from the Department of Insurance. It's zero help to their budget because we're a self-funded agent.
Right.
Yeah. You see things like that. You've been around the General Assembly for years. We've walked those halls together for many decades. We see these things happen that don't make any sense. In this case, what do you think the hang-up is? Does somebody truly not get it, that it doesn't save any money?
Obviously, somebody doesn't get it. But maybe they're looking at the overall economy and the state of affairs in North Carolina and say, wait a minute, we've got to cut state employees. When I was elected, I was working for the Department of Transportation. And if you look at the position cuts there over the last 30 years, I may be wrong, but I believe at one time the Department of Transportation had the most state employees of.
Oh, it was a behemoth, and it was cut by both parties over the years.
And they just kept cutting and cutting. And I know when I was there, the trend was going to hire private contractors. And I heard the message, well, this will save money. Mm-hmm. Well, I will tell you, I talked to folks, some of the engineers that I worked with in the roadside environmental unit and the Division of Highways. And we had engineers there. If something came in on a project, they could turn that around in a matter of sometimes 1 or 2 hours. And when they got rid of those engineers and hired the private contractors, it went from a couple hours to months.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
Because they're getting paid for the amount of time.
Right.
So
there's a disincentive to save the public
It's
money.
very expensive, and the contractors could almost charge what they want to charge and get paid for it.
Yeah.
I know the argument was, well, we're saving the future retirement and this, that, and the other. Yeah, I'm not trying to get off the subject, but that was just one of those.
That's relevant.
You're bringing
very important.
your experiences professionally to the table as commissioner, and I respect that. So with the SHIP program, though, and you, like you were saying, is it 800 volunteers?
We have over 800 volunteers. At one time, we had almost 1,000. As you know, over the last 10 or 15 years, it's been harder and harder for the younger generation to see fit to volunteer for fire departments or civic organizations or whatever.
Well, thank you. Anybody listening that happens to be one of those volunteers with SHIP, thank you, because that's a very vital public service.
You're right. We really appreciate all they do to help people. And the state employees that we have a regional office in Columbus County in Whiteville, and we have 2 SHIP employees there. And those 2 ladies are on the phone constantly with people calling and sometimes people coming in to visit with them personally. And I can't tell you how many phone calls and emails I've received thanking us for what we've done to help people save money and not be steered or scammed.
Yeah, I can say from personal experience, I took my dad to the doctor yesterday, and we drove to Fayetteville, and it's like an hour-long drive, and he got calls constantly from companies wanting to sell him Medicaid Advantage plans and scam things. So it's great that somebody's out there working with older folks.
Well, you're right. Well, you don't have to be a senior, but almost anybody gets scam text messages every day on your cell phones. If you've still got a landline, you'll get messages on that machine.
I mean, I have trouble deciding what's a scam and what's not.
I just always lean to the safe side and don't click any links.
I don't mean to dwell on this, but I just got hit between the eyes today with something that I didn't realize. When this proposed budget came out of the Senate, and we're being told by both the House and the Senate, you're going to have to cut some positions. The Senate had actually identified the positions we had to cut, which we strongly disagreed with because of some of our actuarial and most critical positions. And the House is saying, well, you're still going to have to cut, but you'll be able to identify those positions. So a few weeks ago, when I was meeting with our chief operating officer, my chief deputy, and the HR folks, and everybody's telling me, Commissioner, if we're going to have these cuts, we'd be better off to identify those. Said maybe we should take some of these positions and freeze them.
Yeah.
And I reluctantly said, well, I guess so. Last week, I made an executive decision. I went to HR and I said, I'm unfreezing all these positions and we're going to post them because I need to fill them. We need the people. Well, I found out that we have a statute that says if those positions have been frozen, you can't fill them and you can't post it. I was shown a letter today dated June 30th that came from the state OSHR with the legislation that was passed and said that I had also submitted some in-range pay increases for younger actuaries that were really underpaid, and this request had been submitted early in the year and hadn't gone anywhere. So I went to HR and said, we need to move on this. And then I found out that there was legislation put in place this year that barred any in-range adjustments at all from any agency until the budget settled. And this really hamstrings any agency head in running their agency. And it's just real bothersome when you
can you tell
see that.
Anybody listening how that affects? I mean, I know people talk all the time. They don't trust insurance companies. And y'all, those are partners to you. You have to work with insurance companies because you are the person with your staff making sure all of us are getting fair rates and fair treatment when we deal with an insurance company. So you have to have qualified folks, I would assume. How would cuts affect any of us as consumers?
It could very well translate to higher insurance rates because the actuarial division, these are what I call the brains of the outfit. If you're an actuary, you can make a ton of money in the private sector, and it is extremely difficult to recruit actuaries on the state pay scale. So we've been fortunate to recruit some younger ones out of college, and they're not paid nearly what they would be in the private sector.
They take less pay in hope for security and benefits.
And then when we're trying to retain those employees with an in-range adjustment, to be hamstrung by that type of legislation is very harmful, not only to the agency, but it's harmful to the consumer because the insurance companies have lots of actuaries and lots of attorneys and people figuring out how to raise our rates. We have to be able to have enough intelligent people to say, no, their numbers are not right.
And I think the public usually doesn't understand that. If you ask somebody about a state employee, they think some bureaucrat we really don't need. They don't think, ooh, that's the person making sure my rates don't go up. Now, you're in a political world. You have to run for this job every 4 years, and you've done quite well at that. People have made challenges to you from every which direction, and the public has shown their faith in you. When you sit down with these insurance companies, it seems to me you had some pretty impressive results. Didn't they want increases over 20% and you got them down to 5%?
Correct. Like in automobile insurance, they filed the rate filing the first of this year, and they wanted almost 23%. That was average. Some areas of the state was above that. And that's pretty significant.
That would have hit the pocketbook.
Increase. And so when I said no, we have a process we're required to follow by state statute. And if the commissioner has to pick one or two words, yes or no, and I've always said no, not just because I wanted to say no, but because the numbers that I've seen coming from the insurance industry, and my judgment has been higher than absolutely necessary and unfairly discriminatory to certain parts of the state. So when they filed that almost 23%, it was 22 point something on automobile insurance, when I said no, when you say no, you have to go to court. So we scheduled a court date for September of this year, and then the rate bureau representing the insurance companies came back to me and said, look, we got a lot of pressure on us with all the accidents that are happening and the claims that are being paid out. We would really consider negotiating a settlement. So I entered into negotiations, and it was pretty intense for a couple of months. And we ended up with what I think was very fair to the consumer. It averaged 5% across the state. And again, a little bit higher in some of our bigger cities and lower in other areas. But most of the consumers I've talked with said, yeah, they could live with that 5%, but 20-some% would be really tough on them.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner Causey, how do you think, well, obviously, Hurricane Helene was a huge devastation, and it was obviously a devastation for insurance companies, too. How do you think that will impact rates going into the future?
Well, the Helene wasn't as devastating to insurance companies as you might think, because the vast majority of the homeowners that lost their homes got zero because it was flood damage. And unless you have a separate flood insurance policy, your homeowners is not going to pay anything. And unfortunately, less than 3% of the homeowners in North Carolina have flood insurance, either through the federal flood insurance program or private flood policies. Now, there were a few bright spots. Anybody that has comp and collision, that's comprehensive and collision insurance, and usually if you're making payments on a vehicle, you're required to have that. Comp and collision covers flood damage, so if your car's flooded away, you get reimbursed by insurance. And if anybody lived in a mobile home in North Carolina, if you have mobile home insurance automatically includes flood coverage, which is a plus.
Yeah.
And we have an insurance company, it's VFIS is the name of it. They mostly insure the fire departments across the state. Almost every volunteer fire department in this state is one of the companies that includes flood insurance when they're providing that insurance on the fire department. So for those fire departments that were flooded, which many fire departments were flooded in western North Carolina, that was a blessing.
I mean, I bet a lot of people up there never thought they'd need flood insurance, right?
They didn't live
up on a hill
near, close enough to the water. This was such a
ridiculously
huge event.
Well, it not only washed houses away, sometimes it washed the houses and the land away.
The whole mountain.
Yeah.
Well, what do those people do then? If for the ones that shouldn't have ever had reason to think they needed flood insurance and they lost their home or maybe a lot of damage to their home, what did happen to those folks?
Well, there's local jurisdictions on the building inspections and who can rebuild where, but in many cases, if they were in a flood-prone area and their house was swept away, some of those folks would not be allowed to rebuild in that same location. And there's other places where they may be able to rebuild as long as they go up in elevation. We saw that with Hurricane Florence when the 23 southeastern counties were underwater. And if you go up around Belhaven and Beaufort County, they've had so many storms and hurricanes in that area. So many houses there are now up 8, 10 feet, 12 feet off the ground.
But if the insurance wouldn't cover it, you don't have anything to rebuild with, period.
That is true. They're going to rely on the FEMA or charity or some other way.
It's just a terrible thing.
Yeah.
So just a shout out to everybody still doing work to try to help those in Western North Carolina, because obviously we're closing in on a year from that happening in a few months.
Yeah.
And there's still plenty of people in need. So, yeah.
Well, we've never seen the outpouring of volunteers like we had with Helene. I was up there a lot. We had folks on the ground, and I want to thank our state employees that traveled from all over this state to be in Western North Carolina. And we were on the ground every day for weeks and weeks from the end of September up until recently. And we did what's called Victims Assistance Centers. So we were there to assist anybody that needed help, whether it was an insurance claim or if they had no insurance, we could help connect them with charity. One day I was in Ashe County at the little airport up there with the chairman of the county commissioners, and there were planes coming in like crazy. And the chairman told me that he'd lived there all his life, and that was the most air traffic he had ever seen. And one day they had over 70 planes come in, and every plane was a volunteer pilot bringing donated supplies from different companies around the country. There's a Learjet that flew in from New York City, and I asked the pilot, "What's this?" And he said, "My company decided to help, and we loaded 3,000 pounds of food and supplies on." And there were people that's been unloaded at the hangars, and other volunteers would come and load up the trucks and take them out and distribute them to the different areas. That was great to see.
Yeah, so if you're feeling disheartened, y'all, there's lots of good people still in this world.
Lots of good people. And you had all of these groups like Samaritan's Purse, Baptists on Mission, and just hundreds and hundreds of churches that had volunteers up there.
Yeah, it was an impressive effort. And people don't seem to be forgetting, which is good.
And the state employees were helping other
Mm-hmm.
state employees everywhere you went.
So getting back to the ship cuts and the just cuts in general, do you have a sense of where that's going to land? Do you think, obviously we don't know what the two sides are going to decide?
Well, right now the House does not have those cuts in, and I talked with the Speaker and several other members of the House, and there seems to be a strong will to keep that in there. There's still that push to cut positions, but if those 12 positions that we froze are not allowed to be filled, and we already know that we're down 12
vacancy
where
rate.
we need to be.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking about what you just said. Y'all had these centers set up during the Hurricane Helene aftermath. What if you had 12 less people to throw towards whatever you needed to do, or 10 less people or whatever? If there's cuts,
it impacts the people. And I mean, every state agency basically is here to help the people of North Carolina. And you can say, well, we don't need this or we don't need that, but it's the people that are going to suffer. It's the constituents of those legislators that are going to be hearing about it.
And I see you, whether it's your social media, the departments, or other people's like counties where you show up for things, you are very much out there and talking to the people. And I think it's one of the things I love about you.
You're all over the place.
You want to stay connected to the people.
I do enjoy it. This morning, had breakfast in Hillsboro, had a radio interview for a good while in Hillsboro. Then we were in Johnston County and Benson with the Governor's Highway Safety Program. We had a state highway patrol, the sheriff's office from not only Johnston County, but multiple counties. And I was really almost shocked to see the Western Carolina Police Department there. And I asked these guys, how many hours did it take? 5 hours driving to attend the Governor's Highway Safety Program and Department of Insurance. We were having a safety event about hot cars and asking people to please not leave your children or pets or anybody in a hot car. There's too many people that die with that situation, especially in the summertime. But they were so happy to be here, and they said that their chief in Western Carolina wanted to get more active in the governor's highway safety program. And I said, this is exactly what we need, people and agencies working together to educate the public in ways that will keep us safer. And, every time you can reduce a traffic fatality, that's going to ultimately hold down our insurance cost.
Right.
I saw another video you did today, right? Or it was posted today, right? About
today or yesterday, I can't remember.
The fireworks.
Well, that's another thing. Every year, especially around the 4th of July, see, on the 4th of July, the week before, the week after, you've got emergency rooms filling up with people that lose their fingers, they get eyes put out, they're burned. And a lot of fireworks are supposedly illegal in North Carolina, but you still have people that go to South Carolina or other states and get those fireworks.
We used to make a trip down there.
And bring them back. But my message is leave the fireworks to the professionals because, parents will buy these little sparklers, which you can buy anywhere, thinking they're safe, but those sparklers hit 2,000 degrees, and you can give that to a little girl, and her whole clothing catches on fire, and she's burned and scarred for life, can put out an eye, and even little things like a sparkler cause fires, and we've seen houses catch on fire, automobiles catch on fire, woods fires, and so our firefighters stay really busy around the 4th of July.
Yeah, and this will air on 4th of July.
There you go.
Yep.
And you're the fire marshal, right? You're the state fire marshal?
Well, that's another issue. I was the state fire marshal for 7 years, and again, without my knowledge or without any discussion with me, so there was somebody in the Senate that thought it was a good idea to take the title away from the insurance commissioner and give it to somebody else.
Did they give it to the state auditor?
It was sort of like they did with the state highway patrol.
Yeah.
But in this case, we now have 100 and some people that are the Office of State Fire Marshal was under the Department of Insurance, created by Insurance Commissioner Jim Long. Now we do all of their work and support work. We pay all their bills. We issue all the grants. But I have no say over what they're doing or who they hire or fire, and they don't report to anybody. So this is a real problem for the Department of Insurance internally, and that's so I'm saying I'm not certainly not trying to tell the legislature what to do, but they either need to put it back like it was or take it totally from the Department of Insurance and put it under the governor or somebody and fund it. We fund the whole fire marshal office through the Insurance Regulatory Fund.
But you don't have any say over it.
So our attorneys saying if something goes wrong, the Commissioner of Insurance and the Department of Insurance is ultimately liable for whatever they do, but the legislature has put me in a position of not being able to say who the state fire marshal is or anything that they do, even though we do all of their human resources, everything, they do not have to follow the same rules as the Department of Insurance because they're a quote, independent agency, but they're not an independent agency. They're totally dependent on the Department of Insurance.
That is bizarre.
Yeah. Well, Artis, you want to put him on the spot with your question?
Yeah, so I've got a big question.
Okay, go ahead. I'm used to that.
Senator Tillis says he's not running again. And since he said that a couple days ago, it seems that everybody under the sun seems to be kind of angling for it, wanting somebody to ask him to do it. So I'm going to ask you, are you going to run for Senator Tillis' seat?
Absolutely not. I like what I do. I enjoy being the Commissioner of Insurance, and I've seen that before where people, they might be in one elected position and say, well, I want to be governor, I want to be United States Senator. But I think there are plenty of folks that will run, and there won't be any shortage of people in the primaries on both sides.
We're glad you're Commissioner of Insurance.
Yes, we
Breaking news. That we can call that breaking news.
You can check one Republican off the list.
Well, do we have anything else to talk about, or
no? We've just appreciated.
We appreciate you giving us.
Thank you so much. Is there something you wanted to add, or?
Well, I know that we do get a lot of calls pertaining to the state health plan.
Mhm.
And I have to remind folks that the state health plan is under the state treasurer, but we do help. So if anybody sends us their issue or complaint, we do handle it through our consumer group. We send it to the state treasurer. We work closely with the state treasurer's office, and we've been able to get some good results.
Wonderful.
And we also have a program that I haven't mentioned. It's called Smart NC. And whether that's the state health plan or if somebody just has a dispute with a hospital, let's say you've been in the hospital for surgery or whatever, and you think all your bills have been taken care of, and 6 months, a year later, you get this big bill, you owe $12,000 to the hospital, which has happened many, many times. Sometimes it's $40,000 or $50,000. All we need to do is know about it. Our Smart NC folks, and they're on the phone every day, they will call the insurance company, the hospital or medical provider, sometimes it's a doctor's office or what have you, and the claimant, the policyholder, and we get really good results. And a lot of times it's things like miscoding or miscommunication. We had one lady, she got a bill for $54,000 over a year after she was out of the hospital, didn't know where to turn, came to us at Smart NC, and we got in touch with all the parties. And the insurance company said, oh, we'll pay that. Somebody miscoded that from either the hospital or the insurance, and every bit of it was paid for. I think the lady might have had to pay $150 copay or
Now,
something.
see, I don't think taxpayers have any idea
Yeah.
there's things like that happening at the Department of Insurance.
They don't. And we talk about the perception of public services and state employees often. So we're educating people on what kind of services the Department of Insurance provides to citizens.
And it's so good to know ahead of time, because I've had people tell me I've been in a battle for 3 years with my insurance company, and I feel like I'm banging my head against a brick wall, and they get in touch with our consumer division, and the consumer gets it resolved in 2 days, and they get a check, and they say, why didn't I think about that earlier? So if people will just go to our website, ncdoi.gov, and I know that maybe somebody out there has had an issue with an insurance claim, but if you do, don't fight the insurance company alone. Go to the ncdoi.gov. There's a little button, and you click that button, and you can fill out the form in 40, 45 seconds, and your life will be much easier.
Awesome.
Noted.
We could all benefit from
Yes,
that.
Yeah.
indeed.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And,
Thank you for having me.
Good luck with everything, and we'll be here working with you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Definitely.
This is a good group.
All right. All right, and we're back. Great interview there with Commissioner Causey.
Yeah, it was a good interview.
I never knew the insurance could be so exciting.
Lots of information that people would not have been aware of. So, yeah, great interview. And we told him we would mention this, the vacant positions in his agency. He was very specific. He gave us some notes on what is available: an actuarial analyst, an insurance consumer analyst, insurance regulatory analyst, and even as far into it as his executive assistant position.
Yeah,
You know,
and
these are critical jobs. I mean, you know, you heard him in his interview talking about what they do for the state to prevent rate
I
increases.
saw one position was with the SHIP program that we were talking about.
So if you guys are interested in any of those positions, if anyone is searching for a job, you can go to ncdoi.gov. Under careers, you will find job openings. So something to consider.
Awesome. And now it's time for the Gen Z Minute. What's going on in Gen Z world, Sam?
So today I have an article that I found from the Stanford Report that talks about 8 ways that the Gen Z is changing the workforce. I'll run through them very quickly, and then we can kind of talk about which ones you find most interesting. So number 1 was that Gen Zs expect change. Number 2 was that Gen Zs are much more pragmatic than previous generations. Number 3 was that Gen Z wants to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is that Gen Z values collaboration and teamwork. Number 5 was that Gen Z wants leaders who guide by consensus. Number 6 was Gen Z cares about mental health and work-life balance more than some of the previous generations.
Mm.
Number 7 was that Gen Zs think differently about loyalty. And number 8 was that Gen Zs look for trust and authenticity.
So many questions. Okay, go back to, what was number 2?
That Gen Zs are more pragmatic.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that Gen Zs are more likely to question everyone and everything. They don't necessarily see the elders as experts and aren't afraid to challenge how things are done.
Well, you're wrong. See?
And it's more of when they are told, this is how you should do it, they're not afraid to go and look for maybe a better way.
Okay.
I mean, that's a good thing.
Yeah, we
That's a
want
good
to
thing.
we want to foster
Yeah. If you can do it better than us, do it.
a can-do
I mean,
attitude.
Not that we want to, we have to.
Yeah.
Right? Or we want to, yeah.
And they ask a lot more questions so they
Yep.
can understand more how this may be the best way to do it rather than a way that they may think is better to do it.
Well, that's a good thing.
And I know that the sense of purpose.
I'm interested in the team thing because I do think that's true, but it's interesting the way you pull a team together. Y'all prefer to like be in your individual space,
Mhm.
but electronically together.
Yeah, and that kind of is what it focuses on in this article. It talks about how the digital world really helps shape our identity. And we grew up in an age where there were so many groups that you could join online
Mhm.
and bond over shared interest to where even if you aren't in a group setting, you still have that group identity
The connectedness.
and
yeah.
that connectedness. Yeah, which I thought was really cool.
It is cool.
One of my favorite ones in it was where they were talking about how they think differently about loyalty.
Yeah, what is that? That was the other one I wanted to know. What does that mean?
Yes. So we grew up feeling like our parents weren't valued
Mm-hmm.
as much as they valued the company they worked
Oh, yeah.
for.
100%.
And
Mhm.
so we kind of grew up with the 2008 recession and COVID, where things got cut a lot, whether it be positions or benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they look more at, I'm going to be loyal to a company that is loyal to me as an employee
Right.
and gives me what I deserve
Yeah,
and treats
that it
me
has to be a
how
two-way.
Well, you know your
Yeah.
self-worth.
It's a mutual
your
respect
self-worth,
thing,
yeah.
and it's a big mutual respectful communications because I think also, however we were raised, even if we were raised with the you respect your elders, we have grown up and learned more that it is a two-way street.
All right, we can take this out if I'm offensive.
John's like, if I'm offensive, hashtag, I'm getting ready to be offensive.
I don't mean to be offensive, but
Okay.
I really do appreciate your generation and mine and whatever. I'm not, but I wonder how these things would change if we do go through a period of economic trouble. You know, I think that this generation hasn't felt a lot, and even my generation probably hasn't felt huge recessions the way generations before us did.
Not as well, we haven't gone through a depression, but
Yeah,
I'd say, the economy constricted to where it affected jobs.
especially.
I do think, that's obviously true. Since the post-COVID economy has been the most unique economy in terms of employee power
Yeah,
of any of our lifetimes.
and the digital age just kind of opened that up as well.
Yeah.
So that's just very interesting.
But what's mainly, I think, changed everybody's attitudes is there's less and less benefits being given by employers.
Mhm.
So people are thinking, why do I need to stick around here and try to be a star performer?
When I can go do my own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if it's
Yeah.
just about what I'm going to make per hour, I'll do it for myself. If it's what I'm going to make per hour, plus it's going to give me stability of benefits, but that's eroding.
Mhm.
That's right.
And that's why state government is still attractive. Young people, for real.
Yeah.
Director Meyer of the Office of State Human Resources has said it everywhere I've heard her speak.
Yeah.
They want to try to attract young people back into state government. We need them. We need the fresh thinking. And I think, John, I don't think you were offensive. I think you're just throwing some reality into the situation, which is a lot of people have gone to work in a time period where they haven't seen yet what it's like for jobs to be hard to come by.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I do think more people will want to come back to the state. The question is, how much have we eroded the jobs in the state
Yeah.
by that time?
Yeah.
Maybe we can have Director Meyer on
Meyer
the
on that
on the
pretty cool.
podcast.
Yeah. But I I think those are what you read sounds pretty on point from our experience with y'all.
Good job, Sam. Any pop culture minutes you can speak about?
Besides the P. Diddy verdict?
Oh, wow.
There's not much. There's not much. There's not really any award ceremonies or anything going on right now.
It's a slow time.
It's just hot in summer. And
Gross.
Yeah, there's a lot of new music coming out. Get ready for new music this summer. Sabrina Carpenter's releasing new music. Benson Boone just released some new music, a lot of new pop music.
Is it going to be a Sabrina summer again this year?
I think so. I
don't love her new song. I don't think it's as catchy as last year's bangers.
Espresso.
Everybody's going to start tuning into the SEANC podcast for their...
Yeah, they're just going to be like, I want to fast forward to the last 10 minutes.
That pop culture minute.
Yeah.
All right, well, now it's time for the question of the week to wrap up.
I'm speechless.
Yeah, I got nothing.
John's wacky weird question of the week.
So as we talked about with Commissioner Mike Causey, it is July 4th week. Last year, I remember our question was, do you like fireworks?
Yeah, only safe ones.
Yeah. So this year we'll do just what's your favorite part of the 4th of July?
Yeah, so I'll just jump in and go first here. So Commissioner Causey talked about illegal fireworks, and I'm going to throw Artis in this mix because she was in it too. But we used to live in Granville County, way out in
Causey,
the country.
I just watched.
And we would pool our funds in our little neighborhood, and one of the guys next door would make the trip, come back with a truckload of fireworks, and we would have our own fireworks display out in the country, in the horse pasture. Artis has brought her family and come and enjoyed the fireworks on the 4th before when we lived there.
I thought we were in South Carolina. I didn't realize.
Virginia.
Virginia. Did they have lax fireworks?
I don't think so. Oh. If they do, we didn't know about it. So.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't want to go anywhere.
Don't remember that either.
Anything stand out with you, Artis, on the 4th of July?
I mean, 4th of July, for the longest time, for me, once I got older, was just about everything it literally means for our country, what the founding fathers were thinking and doing, and studying the supposed conversations they were having as they were putting together the Declaration of Independence and their thoughts around becoming this new country, this complete experiment of a country.
Yeah.
And so I loved July 4th for that reason for years. And then I lost my mother on July 4th of one year, of 2007. And, so it kind of changed, dimmed the light for me for just a little bit. But then I realized, having kids, that you got to still focus on what matters. So to me, it still comes down to that. I think we have lost a lot of that spirit that folks had who founded this country. And I am prayerful. And I think that's what I'll spend this July 4th doing a lot of, is reflection and prayer about how we move forward together. Anyway, that's my July 4th thought. And I also will say that if she was going to go on July 4th, at least Mom has Thomas Jefferson and John Adams as company, because that's when they passed.
Yeah. For me, when I was really little and I lived in Tennessee, we would just buy a bunch of fireworks and set them off in the yard after playing in the pool, and my dad would grill out something. And then once we moved to North Carolina, we had a family friend who had a lake house. So we would go out there and spend the whole day on the lake doing wakeboarding and tubing, which was always terrifying because they said they would drive slow. They did not drive slow. And then at the end of the night, we would all get on the pontoon boat and have some blankets and just kind of curl up and watch the fireworks from the middle of the lake.
Good old-fashioned fun.
Cool.
Yeah. I think that 4th of July might be my favorite holidays besides Christmas. Everybody loves Christmas.
Yeah,
right?
Christmas.
But yeah, just the same reason Artis talked about. I love watching all the programs on the History Channel. Back in the day, they would have like a whole series on the presidents, or they had that series America, which was really cool. And of course, the hot dog eating contest. We have to watch that at noon. Joey Chestnut's going to be back in it this year.
Oh, that's right, he is.
Yeah. And then when I got married, my wife and her family always go to Oakboro, which is, do y'all know where that is? It's over near, it's in Stanley County,
Sure do.
Near Charlotte, maybe.
It's kind of on the way to Charlotte.
They always have a 4th of July parade. And so it's like old cars and it's tractors.
Oh, I love that.
And it's really cool. Little town with...
Like you come out from after you go through the Uwharrie.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
So shout out to Oakboro.
Well, I am glad Commissioner Causey did remind everybody, please be safe. Make sure your kids are safe, because they are fireworks are so much fun. But, So,
And
anyway, be safe.
Also,
teenagers
don't drink
still
and
do
drive.
that too. Yeah, also
Yeah.
Don't drink and drive.
Please.
Everyone's drinking.
like ever.
100%.
It's like, just
Don't
don't
do it.
do that.
And don't
Yeah.
drink and drive a boat.
No.
Yeah.
People
too.
get in a boat and they
think
seem
it's
to
okay.
forget.
And they think
No.
it's like
Yeah. It's
acceptable.
not.
Well,
So
you're right.
it's a dangerous time on the water too. So y'all, July 4th is always.
Yes.
Mhm.
So everybody,
Just
have fun, but be safe, and do please think about what it's about.
Yes.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.